Chris Burson. Wait for him. He's just coming. Just waiting on one more councillor to join us. All right, so I think we're all here present. So good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's council meeting. I wish to acknowledge the Wadawurrung people and all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who are part of our Greater Geelong community today and who are joining us in the meeting. So the meeting is being broadcast on the internet, and a recording of the meeting will be published on the council's website. So getting on to business, first of all, I'll look at apologies and leaves of absence. There are two requests for leave of absence. We have Councillor Melissa Cadwell for the dates 29 October 2025 to the 31st of October 2025. So I have a mover, Councillor Katos, seconder Councillor Wilkinson. All those in favour? So that's carried. The second leave of absence to be granted to Councillor Emma Sinclair for the dates 31 October to 6 November 2025 inclusive. Can I have a mover for that? Councillor Story and Councillor Wilkinson. All those in favour? So that's carried unanimously. Declarations of conflict of interest.
I have one.
Councillor Councillor Eddie Contell, first of all.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I've got a conflict with what I believe is item 2.18, which is the tender T240094, awarding of asphalting services. There are a number of tender applicants that are customers of a business of which I am a director. As such, I will step out during that discussion, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you. Councillor Contell. Councillor Cadwell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a conflict, conflict with item 2.1, the proposed change of use for 50 Westmoreland Street, Whittington. I'm an owner-occupier of a neighbouring property.
All right, thank you, Councillor Cadwell. So likewise, you'll step out when that matter's up for deliberation. Confirmation of the minutes of meeting that was held on the 7th of October. If I have a councillor to move that. Councillor Sinclair moves. Councillor Nelson second. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Next we move into question time. We have a number of questions this evening. The first one is from Oscar Hinden, if Oscar is here and wishes to speak to his question. No, Oscar's not here. Tom O'Connor, if Tom O'Connor is here. No. Next question is from Sarah Drofenick. Sarah Drofenick. No. Next is Wayne Jury. Wayne Jury, yeah. If you wish to come forward to the table here, you can ask your, I think, two questions.
Thank you. My name is Wayne Jury. I'm fortunate to be a ratepayer, City of Greater Geelong. I live in Herne Hill. My first question is the City willing to facilitate dialogue and negotiations between community groups who support the sale of the land designated for social housing at Bellpost Hill and Belmont, and with those who oppose it, in order to generate solutions which address legitimate community concerns while also ensuring that sufficient social housing is built to meet community needs?
We'll hand that over to the relevant Executive Director for Placemaking, Executive Director Tennealle Bradley.
Thank you, Mayor, and thanks for your question, Wayne. As the sale of the land reports are on the agenda for decision later this evening, we're unable to provide you with a formal response at this time. Council values the feedback during the consultation period and appreciates everyone that took the time to speak to their submission at the submission review panel hearings. And this feedback will be considered as part of Council's decision-making process tonight. And the decision from the meeting tonight will be communicated with community members after the meeting.
And then your second question.
How does Council propose it will ensure sufficient social housing will be delivered without either A, using existing vacant land for this purpose, and or B, existence of a mandate for a significant percentage to be social housing in new housing developments?
I'll hand back to Tennealle Bradley.
Wayne again. The state government is the level of government primarily responsible for the delivery of social housing. Council remains a strong advocate for state government to impose mandatory inclusionary zoning, and we welcome the federal government's ongoing investment in the Housing Australia Future Fund. As per the City's Social Housing Plan 2020 to 2041, Council will continue to assess its own surplus land for suitability for social and affordable housing. Council is also working in partnership with state government to support projects identified through the Big Housing Build, as well as identify partnership opportunities on state identified surplus land.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your questions. Josie Taylor. Josie Taylor? No? Mary Budd?
What investments or programs has the City made in the past financial year to educate the residents about the need for social housing, including raising awareness amongst the general public that the people most in need of social housing in Geelong include women, children and young people escaping domestic and family violence?
If you want, but otherwise we can take that the question.
Yep.
You happy with that? So I'll hand over to Tennealle Bradley to answer that.
Thank you for the question, Mary. As I was saying previously, the Council is committed to the provision of social and affordable housing, and we're helping to raise awareness of social housing and share why it is so important for our community. We have a range of resources available on our website, including fact sheets, and recently delivered a range of communications and promotions during Homelessness Week to raise awareness about this important issue in our community. Raising community awareness and education initiatives is a focus of our recently established Greater Geelong Homelessness Working Group as well.
My second question, what advocacy has the City undertaken regarding mandatory inclusion zoning to the state government in the past year to ensure that enough social housing is built to meet the City's needs as it adds thousands of new dwellings and estates to the City?
Thank you, Mary.
Yep.
Thank you, Mayor. Council has included mandatory inclusionary zoning as part of our advocacies to state government. The Mayor regularly raises this issue with our local state MPs. Last week, the CEO met with the Secretary for the Department of Transport and Planning, and the issue of inclusion of mandatory inclusionary zoning was raised. It was confirmed that at this stage, the state has no appetite to include mandatory inclusionary rezoning and instead is looking to incentivise developers, including offering more flexible building heights should they include a mix of affordable housing in their developments. Thank you.
Your question. Susan Strong.
Hearing my question. The City has a social equity framework which states that Council will consider the principles of social justice, equity, diversity, inclusion and human rights in every service and program the City delivers and every space and place that the City manages. This builds on the City's 3 organisational social equity principles of decision-making informed by social equity data, effective and focused partnerships, and designing for community need and equity. How and will the City and Council be applying its social equity framework when it considers whether the land which was identified for the use of social housing is sold?
Thank you. I'll hand again back to Tennealle Bradley.
Good question, Susan. All surplus land that Council has is considered for social housing in accordance with Council policy. Other factors that may mean it is not recommended for social housing includes community consultation outcomes, site encumbrances such as planning, overlays, drainage, vegetation, the size of the block and access to services.
That answer. Next question, Britt Inga Olsen.
I have 2 questions regarding the City Social Housing Plan for 2020-2041. The first is, do councillors believe that selling 2 blocks of land identified for social housing in Belmont and Belpost Hill is aligned with the Council's Social Housing Plan for 2041?
I'll hand to Executive Director Tennealle Bradley.
Great. Similar to the previous question that was asked, as the sale of land reports are on the agenda for decision later this evening, we're unable to provide you with a formal response at this time, but the decision will be communicated with community members after the meeting. You did have a second question though, so I'll let you.
Yes. Which actions from the plan, that is the social housing plan, particularly those with short-term time frame, have been or are being implemented?
Executive Director Tennealle Bradley.
Many actions from the Social Housing Plan 2020-24 are being implemented or in progress. In April 2025, Council approved a long-term lease for social housing at 116-120 Purnell Road, Corio, to a registered housing provider. This lease supports the plan's goal of using city-owned land for social housing. Council is also taking all opportunities to advocate to state government for mandatory inclusionary zoning, as I mentioned before. We are also negotiating with developers to include social and affordable housing in new developments as part of planning scheme amendments and planning permits that are secured through 173 agreements. Significant information regarding social and affordable housing is available on our website, and we use this data to regularly support our advocacy efforts and the work of local housing associations.
Thank you for the question. Thank you, Tennealle. Catherine Talbot.
Hello, good evening everyone. Thank you for hearing my questions. I'm just going to read both together, save some time. My first question to the councillors tonight, a key theme of the Stage 1 Open Space Strategy, the engagement strategy detailed that residents want, quote, open spaces close to home and better connected. The community value having open space close to home, making it easier to visit regularly. They also appreciated parks, which are well connected to each other and to places like shops and libraries, allowing them to visit parks as part of their daily commute or activities. This is what the people of Belmont have voiced they want. We had around 50 residents attend the site a few weeks back for a group photo. I know Bernice has sent this out to all councillors. Our petitions ask council to keep Dean Street as public open space, both in 2022 with 824 signatures and current petition with 580 signatures submitted at the September meeting. This now has an extra 38 signatures. We're hoping we can include this in the numbers. The residents of Belmont are asking councillors to keep Dean Street as open space for the current and future residents and consider uses that retain the site as open space and allow activities that promote community cohesion on the site and a place for both the residents and biodiversity to flourish. I ask councillors to consider the importance of open space to themselves and their neighbours close to where they live. I'm asking council if they have considered the impact development of this site will have on residents by taking away this space, particularly with the targets for housing in Geelong, with the push for 128,600 more homes by 2051, with 60% coming from infill housing. Shrinking backyards will see a greater need for parkland and recreation space that residents can walk to. We're living in an increasingly obesogenic environment, and further restriction of recreational spaces contributes to this issue. The space is currently frequented by people on their daily walk and children playing. From a traffic management point of view, with Oberon Primary School's 230 students, a growing school that had less than 100 enrolments 10 years ago, and the 99 students who will attend the new kindergarten daily, to the staff and visitors at TLC. Have any councillors tried to navigate the area at 3:15 on a school day? I can't get into my own driveway. The sale of the land and the development will see lots of emergency evacuation, a loss of an emergency evacuation point for residents of TLC, as well as Oberon Primary School, who have recently conducted a practice evacuation to the site. This reserve is not a surplus space. It is very much in use and residents want it retained. Victoria was once known as the Garden State, according to our number plates. Other cities throughout the world, Paris, Singapore, you name it, are embracing gardens and parks for the beautification and livability of these cities. Why are we going backwards by developing our parkland? We ask councillors to not allow sale of this reserve to go ahead. Thank you.
For your question, I'll hand to the CEO, Ellie Wastie, to respond, please.
Thank you. 2 questions, Catherine. As the sale of land reports are on the agenda for decision later this evening, we're unable to provide you with the formal response at this time. However, we value the feedback received during the consultation period and appreciates you and everyone who's taken the time to speak to their submission at the submission review panel hearings. This feedback will be considered as part of councillors' decision-making process, and we will communicate with community members after the meeting. Thank you.
Very much. Bernice Davies.
Thank you for allowing me to ask yet another question. So my issue today is, I better put my glasses on, firstly relating to the proposed sale of Dean Street Reserve and the council. How will the council protect the right of future generations to enjoy and benefit from local public open spaces? So, to clarify this further, over the last 2 meetings, I've raised a number of issues regarding Dean Street, particularly social issues, including the implications of Belmont changing from being an outer suburb to an inner suburb, the growth of the high-density housing, the increase of social disconnect and loneliness, plus, of course, the unsuitability of the site of the Dean Street Reserve. Now, research consistently shows that access to green spaces helps address these issues and supports community wellbeing. Council's own adopted policies and strategies recognise these principles. For example, your sustainability policy adopted in February 21 focuses on achieving best outcomes for people, the environment, the economy, now and in the future. And its goal is to maintain the long-term health of these systems for future generations to enjoy. Your environment strategy, adopted in September 20, aims to protect and improve the region's environment and to reduce its environmental footprint. It identifies key goal, the creation of greener community spaces and open planning with a long-term horizon. Your open space policy, I think Catherine just mentioned that, commits council to providing and maintaining open space for recreation and leisure while protecting vegetation corridors and wildlife habits. And I think you've also got under development an open space strategy, noting that open space is essential to livability, community health and wellbeing, diversity and climate resilience. Now, given everything I've just said, given these principles, I ask you, how will council ensure that its decision regarding Dean Street genuinely reflects its stated commitment to maintaining public open spaces for the benefit of both the current and future generations?
Right. That is a much longer question than what you've submitted. So I will hand to Executive Director Tennealle Bradley if she's able to make any comment, and then we can respond in writing more fully to the expanded question.
So I can make comment about the open space planning aspect of your question. So we are currently planning, as you mentioned, our open space strategy to guide the future of open spaces across the city for the next 10 years. It will focus on equitable provision of open space for the community, how investment should be prioritised, and to ensure the city can sustainably manage the network. During stage 1 of the community engagement, we heard that the community highly valued access to nature, better connectivity and accessibility, character and uniqueness, diversity of parks and experiences, maintenance and safety, and equity in standards. The strategy will commit to ensuring these principles form the basis of future planning and decision making for open space opportunities across the city, and we'll be using the strategy to assess suitability for open space.
Right, thank you, Tennealle. Thank you for your question. So, Chrissy Freestone.
Evening,
Chrissy. Yeah, thank you.
Mr. Mayor and councillors, thank you for taking my questions this evening. So I would like to begin on a positive note by acknowledging and sincerely appreciating the council's efforts to increase Geelong's tree cover through the tree planting initiatives discussed at previous meetings. However, unfortunately, I was very disappointed to read of the council's decision not to further pursue permit controls to better protect trees on private residential land through an overlay or local law, despite, by its own admission, overwhelming community support for stronger private tree protection measures. Council's rationale is that Amendment VC 289 under the Plan for Victoria already covers canopy tree protection, making further local measures unnecessary. However, because the amendment includes numerous exemptions, such as exclusions for low density zones and certain developments, current protections do remain partial at best, and stronger local laws are still needed to close those gaps. There is no duplication, as the Council maintains, between the State's Clause 52.37 and local tree laws. The State Clause sets only a minimum baseline. It does not cover smaller or specific high-value trees and does not account for canopy loss rates, neighbourhood heat vulnerability or biodiversity corridors. Any local law that goes further complements rather than duplicates the state's framework, and many leading Melbourne councils retain their own local laws for greater private tree protection in recognition of this fact. As no report was publicly released following the community consultation, it's unclear on what basis Council decided not to pursue stronger local laws to protect trees on private land. Was a cost analysis conducted, and were different options for stronger protections fully explored before reaching that conclusion?
That question, I'll hand to Executive Director Tennealle Bradley.
Thanks. So Council did acknowledge widespread community support for stronger tree protection, but determined the amendment VC 289 provided sufficient baseline controls. A broad cost and feasibility analysis of local laws and planning overlays was undertaken, showing high implementation costs and uncertainty around effectiveness. Council therefore opted to defer to state provisions and focus on education and the forthcoming urban forest strategy refresh rather than proceed with new local tree protection laws. We are hopeful that through the development and implementation of the urban forest strategy, we'll be able to increase greening significantly across the city.
A second question you had?
Which sort of Tenniel kind of partially mentioned. So, yes, the council did state in its media report that it would, rather than pursuing better tree protection initiatives, it would simply support the aspirations of the community and the Victorian Government's amendment through education and resources. So I find this statement a bit problematic because no such education programs or resources currently exist in Geelong, not that myself and others could find. The Botanic Gardens offers only general plant education for primary students, not community programs on urban tree protection or preservation, planning or maintenance. And the council's sole formal tree initiative is a free nature strip tree request program without really any educational component or support for private property. Also, the Urban Forest Strategy 2015 to 2025, which is due to expire, specifically mentions an aspiration to, and I quote, engage the community fully to appreciate the city's trees. So to this end, I would like to know what council initiatives there have been over the past 10 years to educate the community around the preservation of urban trees, and what plans does the council have to provide sustained and ongoing education programs and resources around the importance of protecting trees on private land, and more to the point, has or will the council allocate monies in future budgets to support these initiatives? Thank you.
Tenniel, if you'd like to touch on that as well, please.
And thanks for your second question, Chrissy. The city engages in a multi-layered approach to educating and engaging the community about the benefits of trees and their importance to community wellbeing. These efforts include participating in community events such as National Tree Planting Day, where between 1,500 and 2,000 trees are planted with the help of a local school and community members each year. We also support local groups by facilitating memorial plantings throughout the city and celebrating our recognition as a tree city of the world. Additionally, the Geelong, as you mentioned, the Geelong Botanic Gardens runs an education program that promotes the urban forest and its benefits. We also leverage social media to engage with the community and host events such as the Geelong Nature Festival and the Victorian Tree Climbing Competition. Furthermore, we partner with industry bodies to provide seminars on tree care and maintenance. These activities are all undertaken through existing operational funding, demonstrating our ongoing commitment to tree preservation and community education.
Thank you, Chrissy, for the questions. That concludes the question time for this evening. We now move to petitions. I understand, Councillor Kados, you have a petition this evening?
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to table a petition on behalf of residents in the Bacalay Crescent area of Grovedale who are seeking a dedicated children's play area in their local area. And there's 35 people who've signed that petition. I'd be pleased to present that to Council.
All right, good. So we consider that tabled. We now move to our substantive reports. The first item is the proposed change of use for 50 West Moreland Street, Whittington. Councillor Cadwell, were you going to step out? Councillor Cadwell has left the room. So have someone move that motion? Councillor Sinclair and a seconder, Councillor Sullivan. Yes, Councillor Wilkinson.
I'd like to move a procedural motion.
Councillor Wilkinson moves. Is there a seconder? Councillor Eddie Contell seconding. Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you, that's better. Just with the sort of lack of clarity in the reports and in the information provided, I seek for us just to pause and review for further investigation and discussion in terms of the officers closing off the EOI process thoroughly and investigating this further.
All right. Councillor Eddy?
No, I totally support that, Mr Mayor.
Does anyone else wish to speak? Councillor Aiken?
That existing community hall was being used by senior citizens group only about 3 or 4 years ago, so there may be a significant opportunity for community activation on that site location and not the need to build another facility if that hall is up to standard. So I do believe it does deserve to be deferred, and there does need to be discussions amongst the council group and interested community organisations. Yeah.
All right, any other councillor wishing to speak on the deferral? No, so Councillor Wilkinson, anything further in closing?
Just to reiterate what Councillor Aitken has just said in terms of that priority given to exploring that community asset has already proceeded. So, just to configure and provide the relevant information for that.
Perfect, thank you. So put that to the vote. All those in favour? So that's unanimous, so that matter is deferred. We'll get Councillor Cadwell back before we proceed. Right, okay, so the next item is the proposed sale of land of 5A Dean Street, Belmont. Can I have someone move that motion? Councillor Katos moves, Councillor Nelson second. Councillor Katos.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This motion before the Chamber this evening, along with a number of other motions about sale of land, is for 5A Dean Street in Belmont. The site was formerly a scout hall and youth club that was on the site. I remember, as I grew up in Belmont, I do remember driving past them on many occasions. And those buildings unfortunately fell into disrepair and were demolished, and they were removed from the site several years ago. In 2021, the council did do an audit of council-owned properties under the social housing plan from 2020 to 2041, and 5A Dean Street was actually identified as a potential property, and a 6-week community engagement was held back in 2022, and overwhelmingly the community there was opposed to putting social housing on that site. 61% of those opposed it in the local community, and most of them were from that local area. Now, one thing that's before us tonight, as a bit of context, up until the end of last year, we had monitors here in place at Geelong, and one of the things the monitors did identify was our debt. Our debt is a real problem, and we need to reduce that debt. And part of this strategy, we have to sell $17 million worth of land in this year, and so far we haven't sold any. So we do need to think of the whole municipality with this. I understand the residents there that are looking for open space, but look, it's never been a park. It's always been land. It's had the Scout Hall on it for as long as I can remember. I grew up in Belmont, and it's had the Scout Hall on it. That was demolished, and basically it's just been an empty block ever since. And you can see a little goat track that's formed as a shortcut through it. But look, based on that, I support selling the land, as I think it's overall, we have to reduce our debt because we are at the limit, and we want to provide a lot of services into our community. And with, unfortunately, being at a 60% prudential limit, services and capital works, we can't borrow any more money. So unfortunately, we do have to sell properties, and this being one of them. And I'd be happy to support this motion before the chamber this evening.
Councillor Kados. Councillor Nelson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I was going to speak about the study that was done, the survey that was done in 2022 as well, the social housing engagement report, where, as Councillor Kados said, 61% of respondents were opposed to the social housing. But what was noteworthy for me was that 80% of respondents that lived near or abutting the site were opposed to the proposal, 80%, and that's pretty strong for me, that they don't want social housing in that area. So that's why I'm voting to sell the land rather than use it for social housing. That's it.
Councillor Nelson. Any other councillor wishing to speak? Councillor Sinclair.
So this is one of a number of very complex decisions that we have in front of us tonight. As our councillors, my colleagues have mentioned, we have committed to a debt, we have committed to $15 million in property sales to help pay down debt. We are balancing that against a housing crisis, which we, as a level of local government, do work with state and federal government to try and find solutions. And at Dean Street, we do have a Belmont community that has spoken really loudly for open space. So this isn't a simple decision, this is a really complex decision in front of us. As my colleagues have mentioned, there was a study in 2022 that identified several parcels of land for social housing. It wasn't an arbitrary process, it was quite in-depth, and the council invested significantly into this process in the hundreds of thousands of dollars to come up with the best options for social housing. And Dean Street and other properties that are coming up later tonight are considered ideal for social housing. Again, as my colleagues have alluded to, there was 61% that did not support social housing at the time, and particularly in Dean Street. But what's missing from this information is there was a specific request for open space in this property, and we've heard tonight that was a petition of around 800 signatures, so not a small number of people from the local area. And again in 2025 we asked what people in the community wanted for this land, and another 500 people said that they wanted open space. So we've asked the community twice, and they've told us twice that they want open space. At the same time, we're trying to balance it against this need for social housing and a citywide need with 1,500 people at the moment in Geelong experiencing homelessness. I think it would be hypocritical to say that we listened to community feedback when we decided not to progress social housing in 2022. It wasn't actually a decision, we just didn't decide to progress. But then ignore that same feedback in 2025 doesn't really sit well with me. And I do wonder if we're genuinely considering community input when it doesn't suit the outcome that we've decided. And I think transparency in this process is really important. I have noted that we do have financial obligations to meet debt, but as there are many other blocks that the city has identified as potential surplus, and we've already progressed some of these blocks for social housing in previous meetings, even if they haven't been sold yet, they have progressed and are ready to be sold. I don't think that we need these specific properties. I think we become very locked on a specific pathway without exploring the best options and what are the best options for the community. And I'm concerned we're prioritising the ability to sell quickly over balanced long-term solutions that are best for the community. So that is my time up, but I do want to foreshadow that if the motion is lost, that I do have an alternate motion that I'll be presenting that requests that we keep the land in council ownership and that it be preserved, a portion be preserved for public open space and the rest leased for social housing.
Councillor Sinclair. Any other councillor wishing to speak? Councillor Aiken.
Thank you very much, Mr Mayor. In February 2020, the Council adopted the Geelong Social Housing Plan of 2020 to 2041. And at the particular time, we said that housing affordability and access to stable housing was actually the most significant issue that was being faced by the Geelong community. That was 5.5 years ago, Mr Mayor, and it's a tragedy that that issue still is the most significant issue that's been confronted by the Geelong community, and that is suitable, affordable housing. And in fact, at that social housing plan, for the first time ever, the City of Greater Geelong said that we would directly intervene in terms of actions to try to address the issue. We actually said we identify council land that could be used for social housing. We actually said that we wanted to use those sites as demonstration sites to educate the broader community about what social housing meant. And in fact, there is so much confusion out there that we've failed the community over the last 5.5 years to actually educate them about what social housing really means and what was the social housing that we were attempting to undertake in the City of Greater Geelong. Well, I want to clearly put on to the public arena that the social housing model that Geelong Council adopted in February 2020 was for not-for-profit organisations to actually work in partnership with the City of Greater Geelong and the federal and state government as funding bodies to actually establish demonstration projects that actually showed what social housing really was. The general community gets fear when you talk about social housing, but what we do know is the not-for-profit model actually provides wraparound services and actually creates a community for those individuals to live there, for most of them then, for the rest of their lives. And the social housing model that we are actually attempting to do is a reflection that the general market is failed. If you are a low-income earner, if you are someone who is at threat of homelessness, if you are someone suffering from family violence, or if you have special needs based on an intellectual or physical disability, you cannot enter the housing market in Australia. The only way you can actually get into a safe house or roof over your head is through social and affordable housing. So because the crisis is actually worse now in 2025, I believe we have a responsibility of councillors to actually ensure that we look at every single opportunity to build social and affordable housing in Geelong. And Dean Street was identified as an opportunity out of 51 properties. 51 properties the council administration looked at and said this was in the top 3 for social housing opportunities. That analysis has not changed. The only thing that's changed is the recommendation before us is not to have social housing but to sell it. I, as a council, want to be judged about what I do for our most vulnerable members of our community, and I encourage every councillor to actually think about that before they make their decision tonight in return. I'm voting no against the sale of this site location.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I also note the majority of submissions advocating for open space and for social housing as part of this more recent submission process. And in the context of balancing the books and the financial constraints, I also want to identify that given the investment into identifying this particular piece of land as suitable for social housing, the opportunities now afforded to us in 2025 as a council of a growth region to bring in Commonwealth government funding through the Housing Australia Fund and through state government through Big Housing Build, I cannot support the sale of this land as the best economic decision either. It sells off the land, providing funds in the short term while overlooking the real opportunity to bring funds into our region and invest in the potential of this land. So to disrupt the cycle of homelessness for members of our community now and into the future. So make no mistake, I'm not saying the responsibility sits with council solely to provide social housing or for local government, but we can play our part, and we have done that by identifying surplus land that is suitable, and this is what we've done in relation to this property as we go on, and we can also provide ongoing advocacy, as we've already discussed.
Mr Wilkinson. Any other councillor? Councillor Eddie Contell.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I'd just like to make one comment on the back of correspondence that I've received from one resident in the area, and that is that regardless of what occurs here tonight, that the land at Dean Street, there is some potential there for being subject to flooding. And as such, when the Warren Ponds catchment study is completed, we just need to be aware of that we're looking at that closely, regardless of what occurs with that land tonight.
Thank you, Councillor Contell. Any other councillor wishing to speak? If not, Councillor Katos to close, please.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. And as I was saying earlier, we do assess all properties that become surplus and for social housing. It's actually council's policy. But it's come to my attention, for example, we can't shoulder this as a council on our own. The state and federal government have to contribute. And for example, at the moment, right here and now, 67B, I'm reading off the sign that's on the property, 67B to 67C McCurdy Road, Herne Hill, 1.2 hectares. Unique development opportunity. Site area, 1.2 hectares. Current zoning, Transport 1 zone, state transport infrastructure. Anticipated rezoning, general residential zone, Schedule 1. It's part of the Small Sites program, and that is up for sale by Development Victoria. That is a strip of land that runs from the Geelong West Fire Station right through on the east side of McCurdy Road down to approximately where Highland Street is. So that is an opportunity for the state government to do something there. They're selling it off. They don't even assess it. There's no public consultation. They have made the decision to bang, sell it. Now that is an area that has public transport, it's close to the city, and would be an ideal spot for part of it to have some social housing. But that is just being sold off. So we do assess our properties and make that call. And in this circumstance, I certainly support selling this property.
Councillor Katos. With that, I put that to the vote. All those in favour? Those against? Motion is lost. Division? Did we say a division? Yeah, we'll have a division. Those in favour? Councillor Katos, Councillor Eddie Contell, Councillor Stretch Contell, Councillor Ron Nelson. Those against? Councillor Aitken, Councillor Cadwell, Councillor Burson, Councillor Wilkinson, Councillor Sinclair, Councillor Story, Councillor Sullivan. Next, you've foreshadowed an altered motion, if you could please circulate
I did, thank you, Mr Mayor. So, as I foreshadowed, this alternate motion looks at the complexity of the decision and the community need in front of us, and it really seeks to balance some of the community feedback that we've heard. So we are...
Sorry, yes, a seconder to that.
Oh, sorry.
I think Councillor...
I'm happy to second that.
To second?
Yep.
So it seeks to retain the land in council ownership and proposes a balanced approach to use part of the site for social housing while retaining a significant portion as public open space. It recognises our responsibility to deliver more social and community housing and the community's desire in the local amenity, in the local area. And it really acknowledges that there are other options for us to help meet our debt reduction targets. Dean Street, as we've mentioned, was assessed as suitable for social housing back in 2022, and this is because it is close to amenity, public transport and local services. I understand that some people in the community might feel uncertain about social housing, and I think there's a lot of work that we need to do to communicate better, as Councillor Aitken has touched on before. But we really want to support people in our own community, people in our local area that are experiencing family violence, that are women over 55, people that are already connected into us but are struggling to find stable housing. These aren't strangers, these are our neighbours, people that we volunteer with, and people who have already lived here for years. Homelessness is changing. We often other people experiencing homelessness and think of it as a big city issue. But at the moment, we're seeing employed people sleeping in cars because they simply can't afford to make rent or get a rental property. It's a real crisis that is happening right now, and we can't solve all of it, absolutely not, but we can do our part. And I believe that this mixed-use solution will work really well in the Belmont community. And I'm sure that there's members of the community that would have preferred it be all kept as open space, but again, it's about that balance. And I have to think not just of my ward, but for the community of Geelong as a whole and their needs. And I think small-scale housing next to public open space is perfect. I've met some of the community, and they're very warm and they're very opening and very connected to each other. So for people that need a bit of support, I can't think of a better community to integrate them with. Putting this housing adjacent to public open space, such as a community garden, will create a focal point for local members, but also for the aged care facility that sits just across the way as well. This open space can be a real point of integration and bring everybody together. And we want to make sure that consultation happens really well. So I know there's some community priorities around the open space. So for example, having a walkway between Dean Street and High Street. So let's make sure that the community consultation honours that and provides that opportunity for feedback. So this is my alternate motion, and I invite anyone else to comment.
Councillor Wilkinson.
So as discussed, this was identified as suitable for open space through a rigorous and detailed audit process back in 2021. Over the submission process, we have heard many stories of people and individuals and families who are currently experiencing significant rental stress, who have also been or are experiencing homelessness. And I want to particularly thank Jessie, Jan and Amanda for sharing your stories with all councillors through the Real Deal Housing Vigil, and for those who presented and shared their experiences at the submission panel. Like my fellow councillors, I've reviewed this site in a lot of detail, and I feel the dual purpose use of social housing and open space to provide an opportunity to meet the needs and best outcome for the broader community is on balance the best opportunity. The protection of open space, as we've heard from Sarah tonight, is very, very important. That the protection of biodiversity and that space for people to be able to walk and live and breathe, right alongside social housing that can actually break the cycle for a series of individuals that at this present time don't have that opportunity within our city. So I completely endorse this motion.
Yeah, Councillor Wilkinson. Any other councillor wishing to speak? Councillor Aitken.
Thank you very much, Mr Mayor. Look, I actually think this is a very considered, balanced and appropriate resolution to 5 Dean Street, Belmont. And in fact, it has been community-led, this resolution. People that are actually champions of the community for social housing and challenging the council to adhere to its original social housing policy have led the outcome of this decision. And I think what's really good about this resolution as well too is that the community that's led a very strong campaign about having some public open space as well too are getting an outcome in this opportunity as well too. So that's why I think it really is a commendable community-led outcome resolution to the sale of 5 Dean Street, and I congratulate the councillors to listening to their community and actually responding in the way they have to ensure, instead of just selling this particular site location, to actually reflect what the community has requested of us in terms of this particular site location. And the community will be very thankful for both public open space and also social housing to be developed in the Belmont area.
Councillor Aiken. Councillor Sullivan.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and thank you to all the councillors who have spoken before me. We made a commitment as a council years ago, and one that we have continued to honour, which is to investigate ways that we can support social and affordable housing within our community. Now, wealthy sites have been identified and investigated, and we had over 137 different submissions on this time around itself. Only 10 submissions supported selling the place. That's 7% in total. So clearly that did not meet the marker of what the community wanted. We had 76 submissions for social housing. We had 48 submissions for open space. So those two are the key competing priorities for the space lane right here. When we have a recommendation here, an alternate motion that proposes that we pursue further avenues of social housing and a high rate of retaining of open space, I believe it's worth pursuing to meet an amicable outcome for all needs of our community. So I'll support this one here.
Councillor Sullivan. Any other councillor wishing to speak? Councillor Burson.
It's different things. There's veterans have a home that you probably know about in Belpost Hill, and it's like there's 43 people that have housing there, and nobody has any complaints about it. There's there's young people that are stuck in aged care facilities that don't have a place to stay because they're stuck in that. Like all these different groups of people that need a hand are social housing, and we've thrown it all under one that leads people to believe that you're going to get somebody who's going to turn up in your street and steal your car. And I think we need to do much better community engagement to work out what social housing is. The fact that we're going to get EOIs so we can explain that to people, that way people in your area can actually do it. And community engagement, obviously we need to work on, because we tend to do it between 8 till 4 when everyone's working and nobody gets to get involved. So that's a side thing that we need to work on and do better to get our points across and get you guys to be able to speak to us. Being that we can help elderly people, domestic violence supporters, veterans, etc., get a house plus have open land is definitely of benefit, I think. And failing that, if we don't get an EOI that we like, we can still sell it. If we sell it once, you can't unsell something. So yeah, I thank everybody for putting their input in, because if community engagement doesn't happen, then we're just going in blind. So, but we also can't ignore the fact that things 5 years ago, just because that wasn't here when I was here, is irrelevant. Because it's obviously, we've spoken to you beforehand, and if we continue to ignore you guys 5 years later, just because I wasn't here when you guys had feedback then, isn't about stewardship, which is what we are supposed to be doing. So, thank you.
Any other councillor wishing to speak? No. Councillor Sinclair, to close.
Not too much further. I thank my fellow councillors for their feedback and their words on this motion. I think, as we keep getting assured, there are constantly parcels of land that will be coming back, and I'm sure that those additional parcels will give us the ability to meet our target. We've already identified and approved several other parcels of land for sale. Yes, they haven't sold yet, but that's only been in recent council meetings, so we can expect revenue from those blocks. But I think what we're seeing here is a responsible path that honours our commitment to our social housing plan, but also to the local community and making sure that we're meeting their needs, and is really a values-based solution that is in line with our social housing policy. Thank you.
So put that alternate to the vote. Those in favour? Against? Agreed.
Mr Mayor, could we ask for a division, please?
Those in favour? Councillor Aiken, Councillor Cadwell, Councillor Burson, Councillor Edicontel, Councillor Wilkinson, Councillor Sinclair, Councillor Story, Councillor Sullivan. Those against? Councillor Kados, Councillor Stretch Contel, Councillor Ron Nelson. The next item is the proposed sale of land at 2 to 14 Rollins Road, Bellpost Hill. Can I have a mover, Councillor Katos, and a seconder, Councillor Eddie Contel. Councillor Katos.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So this land in 2 to 4 Rollins Road, Bellpost Hill, was identified for a potential social housing site back in 2021. There was the consultation done there in 2022 for 6 weeks, and of that, and I might allow Councillor Contel to speak more, it's in his ward, he knows more about the specifics of this site, but the overall community response then was 68% opposing social housing, 32% in support. So we did another engagement recently, and coincidentally the same amount of submissions as the previous. And the problem I see these days with the most recent consultations, that there's email campaigns run, and the results can be skewed when you do that. You're not having genuine local residents who it's affecting them in their local area. Yeah, I might get responses come from Fitzroy or from Sale or from Colac, all over the place. And that's when you've got a campaign run. And I'm interested in more what local, genuine people are thinking in that area. And I believe the first consultation was more in line with that, as it's very easy to run an email campaign and skew a result, if you like. But what I'll do, I certainly support the sale of this property. It's a vacant site. I believe the site, there's a site in between, I think it was a former scout hall, from memory. But look, I'll let Councillor Contel perhaps talk more to the specifics of the site.
Thank you, Councillor Katos. Councillor Eddie Contel.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Look, as Councillor Katos mentioned, this parcel of land has been vacant for some time. It was a former scout hall as well. I was present for the 2022 community engagement, and what I mean by present, I was actually on site for the drop-in sessions that occurred on a Saturday morning with officers, and they were extensive. And the community was very loud and vocal in numbers that they were strongly opposed to that parcel of land being used for social housing. Now, you must remember, we actually asked them that question. Would they be in favour of that parcel of land being used for social housing? There was 3 parcels of land that went out at the same time, being the one in Corio, in Purnell Road, Dean Street and Rollins Road. And Rollins Road was opposed by the strongest amount of numbers, being some 68% were strongly opposed or opposed to that parcel of land being used for social housing. So we can't just kick the can down the road and now say all of a sudden that we're listening to the community if we ignore what the community told us in 2022 when I stood in front of them looking at them in the eye. The parcel of land that's up for sale can be used for anything and may even be used for social housing if that's what the developer chooses to do so. And there are plenty of examples where we have chosen not to sell parcels of land, and that had been discussed earlier on, and to keep them in community hands. We've got a great example of that later on tonight with Osborne Park, which in 2018 and prior to that, Council voted to keep that parcel of land and that property in community ownership. So we've got form in doing that. But this parcel of land here, we went to the public told us what they were opposed to, and for us to do anything different to that tonight would be very disrespectful of the community that we went to that time ago, regardless of whether you were a councillor then or a councillor now. So I'm supportive of the land being put up for sale.
Thank you, Councillor Eddie Contel. Any other councillor wishing to speak? Councillor Aiken.
Thank you very much, Mr Mayor. Look, I wish to speak against the proposition that a site location that was identified in the top 3 out of 51 site locations for social housing should be just sold by the council. This particular site location is quite interesting, and probably you can understand when you visited the site location why it is suitable for social housing. It actually does have a bus stop right out at the front of it, so it actually has public access. It actually has minimal impact on the existing residential area of Bellpost Hill, because on the other side of the road is actually a childcare centre. And in fact, to the north west of the site, it's actually the Ballarat Road intersection with the Western Ring Road. So there actually is no housing on the other side of the road. And in fact, the block of land sits quite strongly away from the residential areas of Bellpost Hill. So I can understand why the officers originally identified it as a suitable demonstration site for social housing, and none of those reasons have actually changed again today. The site location is still a fantastic site location for a demonstration project of social housing in the city of Greater Geelong. And I just temper the statements that the community is strongly opposed to social housing. I think it's been well defined now. The community actually doesn't really understand what social housing is, and we play a really important role at the City of Greater Geelong to actually educate the broader community about what social housing is. And as I said, for the Dean Street proposal, social housing, that the model that we're endorsing and was under our original policy was a not-for-profit social housing model, which would actually establish support networks and other services around the individuals that are living in the social housing opportunities, so that they can be valuable members of their community and they can contribute to the lifestyle and the amenity that exists in a particular community. And we have a responsibility to use the Bellpost Hill site to actually give that community an opportunity to be able to do that, and the broader Bellpost Hill community to be educated about why social housing is such an important thing to try to address the housing crisis that exists in Australia.
Thank you. And like the previous property in Dean Street, this property was identified as suitable for social housing through a comprehensive audit. And to note, and I know that Councillor Contell has spoken of the earlier engagement process, which was specifically asking that question that perhaps people didn't understand as to Councillor Burson and Councillor Aitken's points. Most recently, however, the engagement was really specifically around this property would be for sale. And when asked, of the 98 people that did put submissions, 9 people supported the sale of the land. So if we're looking at sort of facts and figures in terms of response to engagement, that's important to keep in mind, with 55 advocating for social housing, 25 seeking open space or a playground. I thank all the community members who participated and presented at all of the engagement opportunities, the earlier one and the review panel. And like my fellow councillors, I've also closely reviewed this property. And yep, absolutely, by selling it now, it could be argued that we'll be contributing to housing, as it's likely, given its place and zoning, that someone may develop it and put houses on. And I've heard recently from colleagues, well, you know, you just increase the amount of housing and that will ultimately deal with the housing crisis. However, simply increasing the supply of homes and relying on a trickle-down economic model has not and will not solve the housing crisis. So it does not make homes more affordable for lower income earners, and it doesn't address the core affordability issues. So just to keep that into the context of selling this property. So yeah, I won't be supporting the sale of Rollins Road, given that it has been clearly identified as suitable for social housing, and none of those points have changed.
Councillor Wilkinson. Any other councillor wishing to speak? Councillor Cadwell.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm also not supportive of the recommendation that's been put forward, and I would like to flag an alternative, or foreshadow an alternative recommendation tonight.
Right, okay. That's if this one is lost, yeah? Yeah. Okay, Councillor Cadwell. Anyone else wishing to speak on the matter? Councillor Nelson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. A lot of councillors have been talking about facts and figures, and I've got council's own social housing on council-owned land engagement report. This is council's own report, and it says, with regard to Rollins Road, Belpost Hill, 90% of respondents who have a connection to this site do not want social housing. 90%. That's what the community have said. That's it. Thanks, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Nelson. Anyone else wishing to speak on the matter? Councillor Story.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Having listened carefully to my colleagues' words, I also can't support this motion. I understand the point of community engagement, which is terribly important, and that might fluctuate over time and depending on the circumstances on the day. Ultimately, for us as councillors, we have to make decisions on matters that come before us tonight. And that's what we're doing, and giving effect to our values and our way of thinking about these issues. So I cannot support this motion. Thank you.
Story. Anyone else wishing to speak? If not, Councillor Eddie Contel to close. Oh, sorry, Councillor Kados moved it. Yeah, sorry. Councillor Kados.
Nothing further, Mr Mayor.
All right, so put that to the vote. Those in favour? Those against? Carried.
Mr Mayor, could I call for a division, please?
Right. Those in favour? Councillor Burson, Councillor Kados, Councillor Eddie Contel, Councillor Stretch Contel, Councillor Ron Nelson, Councillor Trent Sullivan. Those against? Councillor Aitken, Councillor Cadwell, Councillor Story, Councillor Sinclair and Councillor Wilkinson. The next item is the proposed sale of 36 Dudley Parade, St Leonard's. Can I have a mover? Councillor Katos, seconder. Councillor Story. Councillor Katos.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This site at 36 Dudley Parade, St Leonard's, was actually the previous CFA site for the township, and that now new fire station has moved up to Murdoch Road, which is a much better location on the main road, as it was pretty much a residential street. I've been there and had a look at the site. And the buildings were not in a very good condition, so when the lease was up there of the land from the CFA, CFA demolished them, and now it's basically a vacant site. It's about just over 1,000 square metres and zone residential growth 3. The property actually was assessed for an early learning hub, but it was determined that it was too small a piece of land to be an early learning hub, and plus the state government policy now is to co-locate or have early learning hubs proximate to primary schools. So obviously this wasn't acceptable from that perspective, and as the site was surplus, it's been put up for sale, and but certainly support this motion before the chamber.
Councillor Kados, Councillor Story.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I took the time to visit this particular site and walk around it and look at the neighbourhood, and have considered the officer's recommendations, and I support Councillor Katos.
Councillor Story. Anyone else wishing to speak to this item? Councillor Wilkinson.
Yeah, I too visited the site with Councillor Story. I thank all of those who participated in the community feedback and engagement, and acknowledge the lack of early years learning infrastructure and the shortage of social and affordable housing, particularly for older women on the Bellarine, is a real issue. But both of these options have been highlighted as unsuited to this site. The need for them has been highlighted by residents and community groups, such as Show, as we heard from during our submission panel. But due to the lot size and the zoning and the location of this particular block, it's not suited for either social housing or the early years infrastructure. But we do need to continue to work hard and advocate for services on the Bellarine, and particularly for social housing options for older women in that community. And I'll continue to do so.
Councillor Wilkinson, anyone else wishing to speak? If not, back to Councillor Katos.
Nothing further, Mr Mayor.
So put that to the vote. Those in favour? It's carried unanimously. Next item is the proposed sale of 48 to 58 Barton Street, Bell Park. So I have a mover, Councillor Katos, second Councillor Eddie Contel. Councillor Katos.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So this obviously was a former school site in Barton Street, and probably about half of it now has the Croatian aged care facility on it, and the other half is the land that council owns. Basically, at the time, back in 2019, this site was purchased by council with the view of putting an early learning hub and child centre on that parcel of land. And then basically, council has done a report into the areas around there. There's also services, early learning services in Barton Street, in Ernest Street and Liston Street in Bellpost Hill, which are currently standalone kinder services. And these are located next, quite close to primary schools, which meets the state government guidelines at the moment, their policy. So to have kindergartens as close to primary schools as possible, so that when you're dropping one child off, it's easy to drop the other child off at primary school, for example. And as a result of this, planning was put on hold with regard in 2023, and the state government, even the projections for the local area there in Bell Park and North Geelong, are saying that basically there's enough kinder places to last until at least 2036. So as we're not looking to build any hubs or kinder on these sites, as we have the existing sites that are in line with the state government policy, and I think it's quite a sensible policy that you're dropping your children off at one place and they're co-located and next to each other. It does make sense. Might not agree with the state government on all things, but on this one I happen to agree. It's just sensible as a parent. It's common sense. Makes life a lot easier. Look, it is a large parcel of land too, over 10,000 square metres, zone residential 1. And as the city has no use for that land at present, I certainly support its sale.
Thank you, Councillor Katos. Councillor Eddie Contel.
I'd like to reserve my right, please, Mr Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Any other councillor wishing to speak? Councillor Aiken.
Thank you very much, Mr Mayor. This particular site location was not in the original 50-odd sites that we looked at for social housing, because we actually, at the particular time, it had a priority usage to be turned into a childcare and kindergarten hub. So it was never assessed initially for social housing. But the reality is, if you actually do look at it from a social housing perspective, it's actually a really good site location for social housing. I know it's listed as saying it's Barton Avenue, but the majority of the land actually faces Anarchy Road. And for those that know the northern suburbs very well, Anarchy Road is actually a significant thoroughfare, and a short walk from this site location is actually the Bellpost Hill shop area, and Anarchy Road is actually a significant public transport route as well too. So This site location certainly lends itself for social housing as well too, and in fact I would encourage that the councillors vote no to the sale of this site location and request, and I foreshadow if it is lost, that I foreshadow an alternative motion that we do consider it for social housing investigating that particular site location. Previously, we haven't looked at it because it was, as I said, being considered for a childcare and kindergarten hub, but now it actually sets itself very well. And if we have sold the site location at the top of Bellpost Hill, which the motion before did do, this actually gives us an opportunity to commit ourselves to social housing at an alternative site location, but not too far from where the Bellpost Hill site is, because Rowlands Road is on the top of the hill and Anarchy Road is actually on the bottom of the hill. So this site location does lend itself very much to be a demonstration site location for social housing, and I think will be well accepted by the community in that area, because at the back of it is a Croatian aged care facility, and it is accessible because of the thoroughfare that majority of the road actually goes against, as opposed to the title of the property, which is Barton Street in Bell Park.
I think Councillor Aiken. Any other councillor wishing to speak either way? Councillor Sinclair.
So supporting Councillor Aitken's statements, initially this was long listed, I guess you would say, as a potential social housing property. We had two preferred sites, and one of them now has been is obviously not progressing. But there has been significant change in the community since this original report. We're seeing, as I said before, employed people facing homelessness. In 2021, there was at least 1,500 people sleeping rough, and it projected to expand to 2,800 people at risk of homelessness. This is in 2021, so we all know and we all see how much worse it is now. We don't have to solve this crisis alone. We've talked a lot about state and federal government lifting their weight and doing their part, and they actually are. So the federal government at the moment, through the Housing Choices, the Housing Australia Future Fund, has billions of dollars available to invest in our community. And if Geelong doesn't have suitable land, Geelong will miss out on that investment, and Geelong will miss out on supporting, funded by federal government, the vulnerable people in our community. And as Councillor Aitken said before, when we think about what we want to be known as councillors, supporting and providing a safety net for vulnerable people is certainly something that I value and I want to be known as. So I also can't support this motion tonight.
Councillor Sinclair. Any other councillor? Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you. And just to echo that opportunity that we have as a growth region to tap into this federal funding and state funding, there are councils in Victoria right now doing so. And really, we're identifying these parcels of land that could actually really benefit from this investment, and this investment coming into Geelong. I think the trajectory's just got worse since the original listing of properties back in 2021. We actually, I think, that's estimated demand for social housing dwellings is about 10,500, and by 2041 we're going to need 13,500. So currently 7,200 urgently need social housing, and 6,400 people living in private rental are paying more than 30% of their income right now in Geelong. Their income, really, there's 1,500 experiencing homelessness right now, and really there's only so much that organisations that we rely on, like Lazarus and Salvos, can do in the community. It's time to kind of disrupt, I suppose. So given the, Rowlands Road as the preferred option identified back in 2022, this one wasn't on the books. I'd really like to see this one investigated, so I'll be voting no.
Councillor Wilkinson. Any other councillor wishing to speak? not, I think back to
No,
Eddie.
Councillor
Councillor
Eddie.
Eddie, I think you reserved
Yeah,
your...
you reserved his
right.
Thanks,
Over to
Mr.
you.
Mayor. Thanks for everyone's feedback. I think what we can gather from the discussion that's occurring tonight is that any parcel of land that comes up could be designated as appropriate for social housing. In fact, any parcel of land that's appropriate for housing could be deemed appropriate for social housing. So this parcel of land in particular, as you would expect, I know it intimately. One, it's smack bang in the middle of Bellpost Hill, Bell Park, where I was born and raised, and I attended school on this site. I also was a big part of advocating for Crowcare all those years ago and the transition of land to council. So I'm very, very close to this land. Having canvassed this area and campaigned it less than 12 months ago, I'm also acutely aware of what the community in that area wants, having door-knocked most of the houses that are around there. And whilst it's been stated that there's not many houses around it, it's been made out that it's surrounded by roads and service providers. There is houses all the way around this property on both sides of it, on both sides of the street in Barton Street, which is a suburban part of Bellpost Hill. By and large, what community would like to probably see is, as most we've heard with the parcels of land, is that we do nothing, that we leave it as open space. And I get that, I can appreciate that. And in fact, if it was not for Hume Reserve, which is a significant part of land just down the bottom of Barton Street that runs all the way from Thompson's Road up to Furner Avenue, to North Geelong Secondary College and then Barton Street. A large parcel of land in Anarchy Road, which is open space, and then Pettit Park, just 1 or 2 streets up in Bellpost Hill. I would probably fight really hard to maintain this as just open space. But I do feel that that area, whilst it could always use more open space, it is reasonably supported by those big parcels of open space that are at least in the vicinity. The community is, by and large, from the people that I spoke to in those areas, particularly whilst campaigning against social housing. And I think, given that also it has not been identified by officers as land that should be considered for social housing, I think what we should do is to try to help the community, is to sell the parcel of land, allow it to be developed into housing as quickly as possible, and some of that may be social housing. As I said before, that will be for the developer to choose, but at least affordable housing given the area that it's in, and that's where we'll be doing the community our biggest service.
Thank you, Thank you, Councillor Contell. So I think that now back to you, Councillor Kados.
Mr. Mayor. Look, one thing from the listening to my colleagues, the difference, I think, all the sites that are up tonight for sale, the difference was it was purchased. It's not a site that the city has held historically. All the other sites, the city has held them for many years. This site was purchased for a specific purpose in 2019. Now, that purpose is no longer required. Had it not been for the city purchasing it then, likely the state government would have sold this land and it would probably have residential housing on it right now as we speak. So I think now to do anything other than to sell the land is incredibly unfair on the ratepayer, because we probably likely borrowed money to purchase this block for a specific purpose which is now no longer required. So that's why I'm supporting selling the block of land, because I think it's fair on the ratepayer, as we no longer need this land for the purpose for which it was purchased.
So, Kados, thank you for that. So I'll put that to the vote. So those in favour? Those against? Motion is carried.
Mayor, could I ask for a division, please?
Those in favour? Councillor Burson, Councillor Kados, Councillor Eddie Contell, Councillor Stretch Contell, Councillor Ron Nelson, Are you voting, Councillor Story? Have your hand up? I'll go through again. So those in favour, Councillor Burson, Councillor Kados, Councillor Eddie Contell, Councillor Stretch Contell, Councillor Nelson, Councillor Sullivan. Those against, Councillor Aiken, Councillor Cadwell, Councillor Story, Councillor Sinclair, Councillor Wilkinson. So that item was carried. So the next item is the proposed sale of 2125 Oakdean Road, Drysdale. Have a mover, Councillor Katos, seconder, Councillor Burson, Councillor Katos.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So the site in Drysdale, so I've actually gone and visited the site, went and had a look at all of these sites to see with my own eyes what they're about. So there's a bit of conjecture here as to whether this land was gifted. The council city records indicate that it was originally purchased by the Shire at Bellarine at below market value, and the subsidised purchase was balanced against the owner subdivider's contribution to public open space when the land was first subdivided in 1960. So according to the city's records, it was purchased, it wasn't gifted. Now, I understand there might be some conflicting opinions out in the community, but I can only go on what the council's records are and what's been provided to us. So the land sits opposite the Drysdale Cemetery. It's just under 3,000 square metres, zone residential 1, and it does have an Aboriginal heritage overlay over the property. It has by and large been used as overflow parking over the years for the cemetery, which is across the road. Now, the cemetery is planning an expansion to the west. Unfortunately, cemeteries do fill up, part of life. And the Cemetery Trust has written to council and let us know that basically they don't support having the car park opposite, use that land being used as an informal car park because of the movement across the road. They feel it's a safety issue, and they've indicated to us in no uncertain terms that in the new section of the cemetery that they will provide parking for mourners who are attending a funeral service at the cemetery. Based on that, the council has already, the officers have also assessed it and required it's not open for public open space, as there is also sufficient and better public open space within the Drysdale area. So with that, Mr Mayor, I'll certainly support the sale of this land this evening.
Thank you, Councillor Kados. Councillor Burson. Further? Anyone else wishing to speak? Councillor.
I'd like to foreshadow that I have an alternative motion should this be lost.
Councillor Aiken.
Thank you very much, Mr Mayor. Look, I've actually looked at this site in Drysdale as well too, and also read all the public submissions and engagement and public newspaper articles about this site as well too. I can't support that it should just be put to sale, so I'll be voting against it as no. And in fact, in the public submissions that we received on all of the Bellarine Peninsula engagement processes, there was a very strong request to don't forget about us. We actually need social housing in the Bellarine as well too. In fact, we're actually more isolated than the proposed social housing sites within the urbanised area of Geelong. And I can't support that this should be sold and just put into the open marketplace. I actually think this is another great example of a demonstration site location for social housing and respond to the public engagement process that actually said we require social housing in the Bellarine just as much as it's required in urbanised Geelong. Mr Mayor.
Councillor Aiken. Anyone else wishing to speak on the matter? Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you. This site that I have visited and spent a bit of time overlooking the cemetery. It's up on the hill with a number of mature trees on the site as well. We did hear during the submissions, as I alluded to and as Councillor Aitken spoke about, from the social housing for older women network in terms of this possible site being close to services and accessible. And while it's deemed as not a preferred site in the council report, it's certainly not deemed as unsuitable for social housing. So I would definitely like that to be explored, as well as the option for open space and other such things. So yeah, I'd be voting no to sale.
Councillor Wilkinson. Any other councillor wishing to speak? Then we go back to Councillor Katos.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, as I said, I've been to the site, and I also note a lot of the residents there have put their gates, and someone's, I think, might even had a garage backing onto it. So I can understand why some of the residents there probably don't want to sell it, because they've obviously been using that block fairly as for their own enjoyment as such, to access their properties. But I'm looking at the site. It's not close to schools. It's not close to public transport. It's not next to shops. I'm just working out what we could do with this land other than sell it. The Cemetery Trust, as I said, wrote to council and let us know that they will be providing. That's the main use of this land at the moment. Pretty much, unless there's a funeral on, that land sits vacant nearly all the year. So there's no further use for that land apart from that. And the Cemetery Trust has clearly provided to us that they will be providing for parking in the extension of the cemetery to the west. So I support the sale of the land.
Right, so we put that to the vote. Those in favour? Those against? So that is lost. So Councillor Story, you mentioned you had an alternate.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. As mentioned, could we see that on the screen, please?
A seconder, please, just for formality. Councillor Sullivan.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Also, having visited that particular site and noting that, notwithstanding the debate about the origin of the land coming into the control of this city and its antecedents have had control of this land for 65 years, and it has been I guess, a de facto car park for a lot of that time. I note the interest of the Cemetery Trust, but that is not determinative, I think, in terms of what we should do with this land. It is a peaceful parcel of land, and it clearly provides a space for people on the way to the cemetery for a funeral, or to visit a site there, or to pause when they leave the area. It's just a little bit away from the actual cemetery land, so it's got that closeness but distance, and it's got quite a feel to it. Now, I think we have not done so well tonight in looking at social housing possibilities, despite the hard work done in the past to identify sites that are specifically considered highly suitable. And this isn't the last ditch corral, but I think this is something that needs to be considered very carefully and looked at with regard to this alternative recommendation, which gives the potential for officers to look at a consideration of alternative uses that could include alternative housing, open space, as described. So in my respectful submission to my colleagues, I support this motion and would ask them to support it as well.
Thank you, Councillor Story. Councillor Sullivan.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Story, for the proposed alternate motion, which I thoroughly do support. And I'll focus on one word that Councillor Story said, and that was potential. And that's what this site absolutely has. And we as a council have much more potential and capacities to create on this site things that simply selling up to the private sector cannot create. With the possibility to look through all of these exhaustive options and many, many more as well, to engage with the community and come up with an absolutely correct and appropriate means of utilising this bit of land. Not only are we sort of co-representatives of Drysdale have been split down the middle, but we represent a community at large. Many residents of the townships were upset when the ward boundaries were drawn down the middle, but we assured them we will always represent them wholly as members of the Bellarine community. And with that, as I have with every other item this evening in supporting the ward members' recommendations, those who know their area best, I thoroughly support this proposed alternate motion.
Councillor Sullivan. Anyone else wishing to speak to the matter? Councillor Aiken.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Look, I'm happy to support this resolution because it does use the term, let's consider it for alternative housing, and I want to put a definition on alternative housing. That's social housing. Alternative housing is not someone goes and buys a house themselves and pays for it with a mortgage. Alternative housing is what the older women's social housing group in Bellarine is requesting. So I strongly support this resolution to... We have already decided not to sell the block of land in the resolution just before this one, and the resolution as it is put up on the screen up there in front of the community and also the councillors means that for someone like myself, I can continue to champion social housing for this proposal parcel of land, and I hope the older women's network in Bellarine also lobby the councillors to ensure that when it does come back to us that one of the serious considerations is it is used for social housing.
I'm also happy to support this alternate motion, especially as it really just requests a report and some more investigation into how we, what the options are for the land at Oakton Road in Drysdale. I also note the community feedback around the possibility for housing for women over 55. It is the fastest growing group of homelessness in the country, and much of this is driven by family violence, gender discrimination, inability to accrue super while you're in caregiving roles, and there's with no other options on the Bellarine. I think this is a much needed option that should be investigated. I'm not saying that it has to be used and should be used for social housing. We didn't explore this property in 2022 because this property wasn't available. So what we're really asking is for those options to be explored, and some of those options that have been noted by Councillor Story is also to have active open space and to really respond to the community's feedback around the donation of the land or the bequeathing of the land and what that means for the community in Drysdale. So I think it's completely appropriate for us to go away and do some more investigation on what the potential options for this land could be.
Thank you, Councillor Sinclair. Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you. About a year ago, I met with a group of women at the Springdale Community Centre, and the need for social housing along the Bellarine with a specific focus on older women was really identified, and a number of women living in their cars or living in crisis. It really, I suppose this really does open up that opportunity to explore and to look at diversity in our social housing, because that's also part of the social housing plan, that there's social houses available across the city of Greater Geelong so people can actually remain in their communities. Because as we know, it's a very long way away from Drysdale to Lara, yet it's all Geelong. It's all part of Geelong. So I'm really pleased that there's a piece of land that may be investigated and explored, because I know from visiting Springdale Neighbourhood Centre there is a lot of work and a lot of support being provided to many people in crisis, and I thank the Neighbourhood Centre for doing that work as well. The piece of land itself has substantial mature trees, as I stated before. It is a very peaceful place. The trees are on the back part of the property and the front part of the property, and I note in the report that the front part of the property that the council would continue to maintain those trees. So if it should sell. So exploring all options is the best case scenario, so that we've actually really well considered the potential of this property.
Councillor Wilkinson. Any other councillor wishing to speak? Councillor Eddie Contell.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. If I could, a question, and then I might speak to the matter. I've tried everything, but I can't actually see the alternate. So I was wondering if someone could actually read it out word for word for me, please.
Sorry.
The alternate motion is that Council 1 notes the outcomes of community engagement for the proposed sale and the attached minutes from the submissions review panel held on the 27th of August 2025 at attachment 2. 2. Requests the Chief Executive Officer to prepare a report to Council by March 2026 outlining the feasibility of alternative future uses for 21 to 25 Oakton Road, Drysdale, Certificate of Title, Volume 10256, Folio 628, and Lot 1. I'll need my spectacles for this. PS 344285L, including consideration to open space, parking, and alternative housing, to inform Council's consideration of the proposed sale of the land. 3. Resolves that attachment 3 to this report remains confidential pursuant to sections 3, 1 and 66(2)(a) of the Local Government Act 2020 as it contains personal information. Disclosure of this information would be unreasonable.
Thank you. Very well read and very detailed. Thank you, Councillor Story. And I'll just make a couple of comments then, if I may. Given that the previous recommendation was declined and defeated, and so we'll no longer be selling the land as a result of that. And given that we've now got this alternative in front of us, and it surprises me that the community there would perhaps want to see social housing on that parcel of land, but councillors close to that area know that area better than I do, that's for sure. So I go with their guidance and I'll support the alternative.
Anyone else wishing to speak to the alternate? Councillor Kados.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I note the alternative motion says to explore the future use of the land, open space, parking, alternative housing. Now, given as I'm of a mind with Councillor Contell, Councillor Eddie Contell, that is, Mr. Mayor, that as the original motion was defeated, I'm happy to explore this option, but I also foreshadow that if this comes back in a report and says sell it again, are we going to keep going around in circles with this block of land? So while I don't want to preempt the report, I'm happy to support the exploration of this, but I'm also mindful of that if the officers go and do their work and it comes back and says that yes, we recommend it for sale, it's not suitable for other purposes, then yeah, I just don't want to see this going in circles.
Anyone else wishing to speak? Councillor Story to close.
Further, Mr. Mayor.
So put that to the vote. Those in favour? Against? It's lost. Councillor Cadwell, can I foreshadow that you'd like a
division? Thank you.
Division? Yes. Sure. Those in favour? Councillor Aiken, Councillor Cadwell, Councillor Burson, Councillor Kados, Councillor Eddie Contell, Councillor Nelson, Councillor Wilkinson, Councillor Sinclair, Councillor Story, Councillor Sullivan, and against Councillor Stretch Contell. I'm used to that. The next item, proposed road discontinuance of the land abutting 230 Swanston Street, South Geelong. Can I have a mover, Councillor Cadwell, and seconder, Councillor Nelson. So Councillor Cadwell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's working, yes. This item 2.7 is about a proposed road discontinuance of the land that abuts 230 Swanston Street, South Geelong, which is the Landyfield Recreation Reserve. So the recommendation is simply to note the outcome of the community engagement process, which was conducted over June and July of 2025, which actually received no submissions in favour or against. The road discontinuance is essentially a legacy or a historical error. The land is currently part of the Landyfield Recreation Reserve. It's not actually being used as a road, so the recommendation is simply to formalise that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kedwell. Councillor Nelson?
Nothing further, Mr Mayor.
Anyone else wishing to speak? If not, we put that to the vote. Those in favour? Unanimous, surprisingly. Next item is Osborne House. I have a mover, Councillor Eddie Contell, and a seconder, Councillor Anthony Aiken. Councillor Eddie Contell.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Well, what an extraordinary night to be in the chamber virtually. After all these years, we now have a report in front of us that, if adopted, will finally see the first steps towards the redevelopment, upgrade and restoration of Osborne House, which I can't see the gallery, but I dare say there'll be some people that have been on this journey for 3 to 4 decades. I'm certainly been part of the discussions around Osborne House since 2008 and very actively involved with many people trying to bring this matter and the iconic Osborne House to life again. The report we have in front of us is on the back of an EOI that was issued in 2021, where we called for the lease and redevelopment and use of Osborne House and Osborne Park and the stables and the adjacent site, and we're asking for Council to be informed that the completion of the procurement activity has been done, and that we're seeking an endorsement from for this report and for the Chief Executive Officer to enter into necessary contracts with the preferred developer being the Gurner Montgomery Group. I'll try and be quick, but there's a lot of history with this site, and as many would know, this was originally built, Osborne House, in 1958 by pastoralist Robert Muirhead. It became the Shire of Corio municipality offices in 1937. And fast forwarding many years on, after different uses, after amalgamation in 1993, it became essentially a community asset that was leased to a number of groups. There was a lot of fighting by various people to maintain the parcel of land and the house in community ownership, and many a time it was nearly sold off. In 2018, we moved the report to maintain the house in community ownership and to find a sustainable and appropriate use for Osborne House that would continue to give value and cherish its heritage and history, and provide something that the community could be very proud of for decades to come. And that's taken a lot of work to get to this point by many people. The development that we've got in front of us will maintain the house in community's ownership, in council's ownership. It'll be a lease arrangement. There'll be community use. There'll be a heritage hotel. There'll be a wellness and spa centre. A development that's sympathetic to the area that we live in. Eco villas, and also provide great connectivity not only to the CBD but also to St Helens, the northern suburbs. Also the opportunity for a museum. And so, look, there's a lot to be said, but I know there'll be others that want to speak to it. It's great that our proposal also calls for the $8 million that Council have had in the budget for many years to be put towards the heritage works, which would see those works completed in line with the Lovell Chen Conservation Management Plan. This will be an amazing outcome for the community. It's arguably the most beautiful vista and parcel of land in Geelong. We've got many people to thank, and I won't go through all of them, but certainly the Osborne Park Association have been instrumental in getting us to this point, and they represent many people and many organisations, including Vietnam veterans and the Cry Bay Camera Club, and also have spoken on behalf of the North Geelong Cricket Club and the Model Engineers. Those that have been really instrumental have been people like Cheryl Scott and Jennifer Banto and Susan Alsop and Graham Palmer and Reen Neurenhoff and Margaret Fallon, to mention just a very small handful. But there's no doubt that those people have been along the journey helping educate us all the way. And if it wasn't for those beautiful people that are so knowledgeable and passionate about this area, I would not have understood it. I would not have understood the value of this iconic site to the Geelong community. And I'm really, really pleased that we fought hard against the sale of this site throughout many councils. I'd suggest probably 5 or 6 councils over that time that this could have been sold at any given time. So, but I'll leave it at that for the moment, because I know that Councillor Aitken is equally as passionate about the site as are others, including yourself, Mr Mayor. But I do think that this is an excellent outcome, albeit it's taken a long time to get here. And I'm really pleased that Gurner and Montgomery are appreciating the site and are being sympathetic to its development and to the community.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Eddie Contal. Councillor Anthony Aiken.
Thank you very much, Mr Mayor. This is actually an historic moment that's taken 30 years. And in fact, it is 4.5 years since Councillor Eddie Contal and I both called for a private-public partnership to secure the future of Osborne House. Tonight, an icon is actually being re-established in Geelong. This actually is a visionary rejuvenation, which is very sympathetic towards the historic colonial heritage and the usage of Osborne House. And in fact, it is befitting of the magnificent location of where Osborne House is located. It actually is the highest viewing point of land around Corio Bay. And that's actually why the Government of Victoria actually originally purchased the house site location to be the southern residence of the Governor of Victoria. The vision that's coming out tonight, importantly, has retention of public ownership of the land and Osborne House. And that's been a really passionate request of the community of Geelong. It amazingly restores the grandeur of Osborne House. It creates a heritage hotel, which I think all of us will be proud of. Importantly, and there's members of the community in the audience tonight, it actually is going to re-establish community usage of the facility as well too, with up to 6 public spaces available in the vision. It also has provision for a museum, and the museum is to respect the significant national history of Osborne House. It will also establish a 5-star destination oceanside restaurant. It also will have a heritage bar, which every member of the community of Geelong would be proud to actually visit. It will be creating a 360 degrees conference and event space, which will actually become one of the most spectacular wedding locations in Geelong. Please don't tell my wife, but I would love to renew my vows if in that facility. And importantly as well too, it actually introduces the St Haven brand into Geelong with a high-end health and wellness centre in what is actually going to be a beautifully restored stables area. And it will be beautiful when you actually see it completed. And finally, it is also providing 40 luxury eco-villas to escape from urban Melbourne and enjoy the tranquility that all of us that have been passionate about that location for the last 30 or 40 years, to embrace the incredible vista that is Geelong and Corio Bay. And I think Melbourne people will be blown away when they actually see it. I want to commend the Goona and Montgomery Consortium for their vision, which is a sympathetic redevelopment and financially sustainable proposal for this icon of Geelong. I also sincerely acknowledge and thank the community, in particular the Osborne Park Association, for their perseverance and resilience over 30 years as councils reach this positive future for Osborne House tonight. I've got one final comment to make. There is also a significant maritime collection which cannot be included in the redevelopment Osborne House vision. I implore that collection should be protected and preserved, and encourage the administration and my fellow councillors to support that Customs House on the Geelong waterfront would be an amazing home for a Geelong Maritime Museum and would be a wonderful addition to the CBD, Mr Mayor. Just as the rejuvenated Osborne House will be an icon in our northern suburbs of Geelong. Thank you.
Aiken, any other councillor wishing to speak? Councillor Contell.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Look, just once again, I'd like to thank the community for being so strong in their advocacy for this site. This is certainly one of those situations where the community needs to know that if it was not for you, if it was not for your advocacy and your strong voice on this, and you know who you are, there's only a handful of you, this would not be occurring today. There is no way known. You've got to be proud of all that you've done to get us to this point. I'm sure the community at large, as Councillor Aitken has said, whether they be from Geelong, Melbourne or other areas, will be absolutely thrilled and amazed and astonished with what is going to be produced on this site. I understand that there's still perhaps some concerns around things such as access and egress, and I know that North Geelong Cricket Club have also got some concerns around some of that, but rest assured we've got time still to work through some of those things, and there is still a community consultation period that will be occurring as well. But I think tonight is a momentous occasion, as Councillor Aitken has said. If you go back and Google Osborne House in the media, there are I don't know how many articles on this site, and many saying that it would never amount to anything other than being sold off and developed as just a normal housing development. So I think if we adopt this tonight, we can be genuinely proud of an excellent outcome.
Thank you, Councillor Contell. It's unanimous. Thank you. So the next item is, thank you. The next item is Elgin Street, Drysdale, declaration of a charge, special rate and charge scheme. Councillor Story, Councillor Sullivan, Councillor Story.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This is the Elgin Street, Drysdale declaration of charge, special rate and charge scheme, SRC 376. As is usual with these matters, the proposed road construction and sealing works have been developed in response to complaints and a petition received from residents requesting to seal the road. This will improve amenity, road safety and limit the impacts from dust, mud and stone scatter to the adjacent properties. The total scheme is estimated at $529,835.83. Property owners will be required to contribute $386,780.15 based on the apportionment of cost and special benefit to adjacent properties. There are 40 properties, 32 property owners abutting the proposed road sealing work that will receive a special benefit. 3 formal submissions were received in relation to the proposed charge, 2 were in support of the scheme and 1 was an objection to the scheme. The objector requested to speak to council of their submission at a submission review panel. This was held on the 9th of September 2025, and the minutes are at attachment 4. Should Council declare the scheme, there is an opportunity for submissions to be sent to the Victorian Civil and Administrative Tribunal for further consideration and determination. It is also recognised that significant hardship can be experienced by members of our community, and the City will consider an application for financial hardship relief confidentially and objectively based on the information provided by the person in the application, and will advise of its decision in writing after receiving the application and all supporting information. So I would like to commend the resolution, the recommendation before the Chamber. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Story. Councillor Sutherland.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and I'll commend Councillor Story for summarising it all very well. There'll be nothing further to add.
Any other councillor wishing to speak? We put that, back to you, Councillor Story.
Nothing further, Mr Mayor.
So put that to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. The next item is Little Malab Street Automated Bollard Trial Report. Have a mover of that, Councillor Eddie Contell. Councillor Chris Burson second. Councillor Eddie.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Look, this report endorses retaining the existing automated bollards on Little Malab Street at Denny's Place, restricting vehicle access to Mirrabul Street between the hours of 10 to 4. We've had a trial occurring in this space with bollards for some time. It's been a very successful trial. The main intent of having the bollards in place was to provide more opportunity for hospitality, for restaurants, and have hospitality outlets to explore and experience broader alfresco dining options. In 2021, Council approved the trial for the automated bollards. There was a couple of complications in between with the operation, but by and large, the trial has been very, very successful. We have seen the area utilised much more intensely, more people going to that area, and recently, with the outdoor policy dining report that was adopted, we also explored the possibility of alfresco and dining to the wall, which was allowing, again, more options for hospitality operators to be able to take advantage of that space in a safe environment without vehicles being in the area. So that trial now completed. All of the operators, by and large, are supportive of the bollards continuing to be in place. We're asking for that to be adopted. From there, we'll continue to work with the operators in that area and the community to see if we can expand on this further still. Personally, I'd love to see portions of Little Malab Street closed to vehicles 24/7. That would be the ultimate. There's a little more work that would need to be done for that to occur, but this is a big step forward towards that ideal outcome. And I'll leave it at that for the moment, Mr Mayor.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Eddie.
Yeah, I'd like to reiterate what Eddie said. It's been great to see all the people getting involved, and it's definitely led to more foot traffic and stuff being able to do it. I know there's, as a former officer, there's obviously the red line, which is where people are allowed to drink and carry on, which leads to certain engagements with traffic going through. So it's great to see them working with liquor licensing and a bunch of other things. If we can extend it to, I know Eddie was saying 24/7, might be a stretch too far, but you know, if we can work with that, because I know as emergency vehicles getting in and out of there Friday and Saturday nights is very hard, and it also, if we can make it so no cars can go there, it'll free up that area to be more foot traffic, but also people will move out to go and get taxis and Ubers, which will lower some assaults and some other things that happens when you get young people and alcohol involved, but it disperses crowds and also it leads them to have a better environment. I've also spoken to some of the locals there who want to see bins moved into like planter boxes and some other things. And ideally we could make it almost like a little bit of a New Orleans area with some music and stuff outside, and there's some walls there with projections on there which you can do if there's no car traffic, but you don't want people standing in the middle of the road obviously while cars are coming. So I think there's multiple different things that we can do to make the CBD a lot better, and I think this trial's been a great way of going forward, so I'm all for it.
Councillor Burson, anyone else wishing to speak? Councillor Katos?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yes, the trials has been good, and having being in the, well, not hospitality industry, but supplying hospitality industry for many years, I know that section of Little Malb Street quite well, and I think it's been very successful. We're encouraging people out on the street. It's dining, it's vehicle friendly at certain times. Obviously, there's got to be some access for deliveries or for maintenance or something like that, which I appreciate. But I think overall it's been very successful, and maybe we should start thinking about, I remember years ago I went to a trip to Japan and went to Kyoto, and they had a whole city block that essentially what they'd done, they'd covered from privately held buildings. So you're walking along and there was a 400-year-old Shinto temple in amongst shops, and what they'd done, they'd actually covered it. So when you're actually in the area, it's almost like you're in a mall. So even something like, I don't know what the feasibility of doing something like that would be, but then you've got true al fresco year round. So it's actually out on the street. So they'd actually done it to an entire city block. It was incredible to walk around. And we were walking around, it was in the middle of winter. It was actually snowing. So it was interesting, much like your market has been very successful, Mr Mayor. It was very successful on Saturday. I've seen by the photos that I saw, something like that, because of the narrowness of it, I think it might lend itself to something of that ilk.
Thank you, Councillor Katos. Councillor Sinclair, sorry.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I think recently we saw at Rome Festival how well that space in Little Malb Street can be utilised for pedestrian traffic, and Councillor Burson actually reminded me when he started talking about New Orleans, because that's what I said to Councillor Wilkinson while we were sitting outside, and we had jazz bands and we had foot traffic and we had parades and we had people dancing, and it did remind me of New Orleans. The only difference is you couldn't take your drink from one bar into the next, which is our liquor licensing isn't quite there yet. But I think utilising these spaces as foot spaces where we don't have traffic driving through, where people are able to engage socially safely, is really adding to the vibrancy of our city. So, yeah, great to see this continue.
Councillor Sinclair. Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you. Exactly that conversation I remember. I want to really thank council officers and the traders for collaborating here and really working this through. It can be really complex with lots of moving parts. So I'm really pleased to hear that this trial went well and that we're going forward. And that idea of putting people before traffic, it's a big cultural shift. It's hard, but I think once we make it, our city will become more and more livable. So really that concept of that we had at Rome, where we had giant praying mantis wandering around freely, and butterflies and people, the potential is enormous, and it's a place that people want to be. So yeah, this is great.
Councillor Wilkinson. Anyone else wishing to speak? If not, Councillor Eddie Contell.
Thanks, Mr Mayor, and thank you to all that have contributed. A lot of what's been said, this achieves, however, for us to go to that next level, as many councillors desire to do, you would need to have a solution in place that would not permit any vehicles in there at any time, and we're not at that point yet. And so for us to see outcomes like you see off Flinders Lane, for instance, in Melbourne, where you could have people dining in the middle of the road, we're not at that point yet. We really would need to have that closed off to traffic completely for that to occur. But this is a great step forward, and I appreciate the support and sentiment around the room. I equally want to congratulate and thank the officers, particularly Tennille and her team, and Ellie, for pushing and working with operators and hospitality operators and business owners and landowners in that area to get a good outcome for the community, like you have with Osborne House, and I was remiss not to mention that during my discussion on that point as well. So thank you to the officers. The Mayor hasn't spoken, but I know that he equally has been very engaged, particularly since being elected and during the campaign, to continue to revitalise the CBD, and I've had many a meeting with the Mayor and some of the hospitality operators and landowners in that area, and I know that he's been pushing this initiative as well and would like to see it expand further. So thank you, Mr Mayor, as well.
Thank you, Councillor Eddy. Put that to the vote. All those in favour? So that's carried unanimously. Thank you. The next item is the City of Greater Geelong Annual Report of 2024-25. Mover, Councillor Aiken. Seconder, Councillor Sullivan. Councillor Aiken.
Mr Mayor, this is actually a procedural motion under the Local Government Act. We actually did meet, if councillors want to be reminded, on the 7th of October of this year. We had a special meeting where we were endorsed the organisation to prepare the annual report for 24-25. There are no significant changes in that particular documentation, and tonight we're just noting the annual report because the Local Government Act requires us to do that by the 31st of October each year, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Aiken. Councillor Sullivan.
Nothing further.
Anyone else wishing to speak? If not, Councillor Aiken to close.
Nothing further, Mr Mayor.
So put that to the vote. Those in favour? So that's carried unanimously. The next item is the Financial Performance Report for the year to date ended 30 June 2025. So the mover, Councillor Katos, seconder, Councillor Aiken. So Councillor Katos.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So the Financial Performance Report, we receive a quarterly update, and this quarterly update happens to be for the full financial year. And it's showing a surplus of 8.3 million, which is actually $6.8 million favourable to budget. Capital expenditure is down a little bit from of 139.4 million, mainly due to timing issues and projects being pushed out. And I know that officers are now working to try and increase that capacity over the next couple of years so that we'll be able to deliver more capital works. And it's not something that can be, the fingers can just be clicked and it's done. So I'm happy to see that the officers are working on increasing our capacity so we can get up there and deliver more capital works projects. As we are, I was told this afternoon, we're actually I think the third biggest CapEx budget in the state. So City of Melbourne and then Melton, and then there's Geelong. So we have a very large capital works budget and aiming to make it even larger. The other thing that's very favourable is our debt. $164 million is where we started the year. And not that our debt's favourable, I didn't mean it like that, but we have a favourable variance, so reduced by $25.4 million. And basically $15 million of borrowings that weren't proceeding and an early loan repayment of $10 million. So we've seen our debt reduce by 25 million, going from 60.6% indebtedness ratio, which was above the prudential limit. 60% is the prudential limit, and now we're down to 50.85. So that's a great result, because if we need to reduce our debt, it gives us capacity in the future to be able to deliver infrastructure, particularly, and maintain infrastructure. That's the other side to the equation with CAP. It's not just about building shiny new sporting pavilions and club rooms and community centres. We have to also maintain our current assets. So happy to commend the report to the Chamber.
Councillor Katos. Councillor Aiken.
Mr. Mayor, this is actually exactly the same as the previous motion before us. That related towards our annual report. At our 7th of October special meeting, we actually released our draft financial statements to the 31st of June, and we also released our draft performance measurements as well too at that particular meeting. As part of the Local Government Act responsibilities, we have to actually present our final 30th of June financial reports, and that's actually occurring tonight, Mr. Mayor, so that there was no significant change between what was released on the 7th of October and what's been presented to the public tonight, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, good point, Councillor Aiken. Anyone else wishing to speak? Councillor Wilkinson.
I'd just like to again thank officers for the hard work for this financial performance report and the previous annual report as well. They're both big pieces of work and undertaken with a great level of expertise. So thank you for the work that's been done.
Councillor Wilkinson. Anyone else wishing to speak? If not, Councillor Katos to close. Nothing further, so put that to the vote. Those in favour? So that's carried unanimously. The next item is the long-term financial plan of 2025-2035. Councillor Katos moves, Councillor Aiken second. Councillor Katos.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this is a requirement under the Local Government Act that we develop a 10-year financial plan by the 31st of October of the year following an election. So we're in by 3 days today. So we've got it in time. There was community consultation, a deliberative workshop was held back in February, and a draft plan was made available for public consultation in July and August of this year, where we invited feedback. Basically, the long-term financial plan is an important document because it links. Council has many plans and many in all portfolios, but the long-term financial plan is what links everything together, because without those finances in order, we can't do the things that we want to do, whether it's the delivery of services or infrastructure. And the one good thing is that over the next 10 years, the key financial indicators are all looking very sound. There are surpluses out to 2035. Working capital is also in the low risk range, which is good. And I do harp on about indebtedness, but our indebtedness ratio was 60.6% in 24. By 2035, that's down to 24%, which is a huge job. And that gives a lot of capacity in the future and along the journey for councils to be able to do things, because sometimes things pop up unexpectedly. So if you're at your limit, there's nothing much you can do, but if you have that capacity, it's good. And the other thing too is that asset renewal and upgrade ratio at 85% or greater than depreciation for the entire journey out to 2035. And as I said previously, it's important not just to build new assets, but the maintenance of them is very important. Because if they're not maintained properly, then they fall apart pretty quickly with a lot of high usage. So with that, Mr. Mayor, I'm happy to commend the long-term financial plan to the chamber.
Councillor Katos, so put that to the vote. Those in favour? Oh,
we
sorry.
Seconded.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, I encourage your enthusiasm because it's been a good meeting so far. So
good meeting. Fast meeting is a good meeting. So off you go.
Look, the 10-year financial plan, there's 3 themes, and I'll put in layperson's terms for them, Mr. Mayor. There's 3 major themes associated for the next 10 years of the City of Greater Geelong. The first theme is don't build as much new stuff. That's theme number 1. Theme number 2 is maintain more, put some more resources and money into the stuff we already have. That's theme number 2. And theme number 3 is don't borrow as much money to be able to build the new stuff. And they're the 3 themes that come out of our 10-year financial plan that we're committing to as councillors tonight. And that's the best way I can try and explain it to the community about the strategic direction that we have as the City of Greater Geelong in terms of managing our financial responsibilities over the next 10 years, Mr. Mayor.
Good, thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak? No? Councillor Katos?
Mr Mayor, and look, as I said earlier, I sort of, whilst I respect Councillor Aiken's opinions, I disagree a little bit with there because the officers are really making an effort. And I was in a meeting this afternoon and they're really making an effort to increase our capital works program and to deliver more capital works each year. And at the moment we're seeing all these favourable, in other words, favourable being we're under budget because we don't have the capacity to deliver these projects. But I know that council officers are working to do that, and I'm happy to see it when it's done because we'll be able to increase our capacity to deliver capital works. And as I said earlier, we have the third biggest capital works budget in the state. We're not delivering small amounts of capital works here. As I said, City of Melbourne, City of Melton, then Geelong. That is the three biggest capital works projects in the state. So I believe the officers are doing a good job, but it can be improved. There's always room for improvement, and they are seeking to improve that. So I'm very pleased to commend this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Katos. So put that to the vote. Those in favour? So that's carried unanimously. Next item is the asset plan. I have a mover, Councillor Aiken and Councillor Sullivan. Councillor Aiken.
Thank you very much, Mr Mayor. This one's another longer-term plan that we have in terms of our strategic responsibility as the City of Greater Geelong. Some interest, it did generate a little bit of interest. I think we got 2 engagements when we put it out for public consultation, but I know we can sort of put a smile on our face when we actually say that. The reality is, at the present time, we've actually got $6.1 billion worth of assets which we manage as the City of Greater Geelong. And to show the rapid growth that has been undertaken in terms of our asset base, Mr Governance Manager, in terms of our asset base and how it's grown since 2022, it was $3.1 billion, and within the space of 3.5 years, we've doubled our assets within the City of Greater Geelong. And that's how rapidly we actually are growing in terms of our urban growth areas and the assets that are coming onto the books of the City of Greater Geelong. What this 10-year asset does plan, it just says how we're going to measure, how we're going to maintain, and how we're going to respond to the community's needs in terms of how to allocate our limited resources to that $6 billion worth of assets that we do have. And just some interesting facts from the report, we do have 3,300 kilometres of roads which we manage in the City of Greater Geelong. We have 2,400 kilometres of footpaths. We also have over 150,000 drainage assets. I know ED Sturton loves every time we get to talk about drainage assets in the City of Greater Geelong. We actually, and it's good to see that David Greaves hasn't fallen asleep in the audience as well too, because we've got 850 buildings, Mr Mayor, that we actually manage in the City of Greater Geelong, and thankfully we didn't sell any of them off tonight. It was just land, and we kept holding on to a number of buildings. And the last thing that the community would be interested in as well too, that we have 200 hectares of public open space which we manage on a regular basis in the City of Greater Geelong. So you can see that the asset management plan is significantly required because of the level of assets that we do own and manage within the City of Greater Geelong. So I thank all the officers for the work that they've put into this project, and it does give us a 10-year understanding of what is our responsibilities as councillors at the City of Greater Geelong in terms of our $6 billion worth of assets, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Aiken. Councillor Sullivan.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and endorse everything that Councillor Aiken has said. He's summarised it all very, very well. I will just stress the importance of a document such as this. To quote again Executive Director Sturton, the council does 3 things. We engage with the community, we provide services, and we manage assets. And it's one of the largest ones in the state, the portfolio. It is important. We all interact with it in different ways every single day. So plans like this are of the highest order, and I absolutely commend it. Thank you.
Councillor Sullivan. Any other councillor wishing to speak? Councillor Aiken to close. Oh, sorry, someone. Someone else wishing to speak? No. Councillor Sullivan.
Mr Mayor.
No. All right. So put that to the vote. Those in favour. So That's carried unanimously. The next item is the Municipal Road Management Plan. Councillor Sullivan, are you indicating you're wishing to support that? Councillor Burson, second. Councillor Sullivan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Municipal Road Management Plan again. This went out for community consultation a month or so ago. We received 343 visitors and 13 submissions were received and reviewed and responded to. This is procedural again. It has already been out to the community, and I'm happy to commend the motion.
Councillor Sullivan, Councillor Burson. Nothing further. Anyone else wishing to speak? Yes, Councillor Sinclair.
I'll speak very briefly. I'm not going to lie, this is probably not the most interesting document in the world, but I don't think it represents the wealth of work that sits underneath it. So in my area, it is brand new. You'd think we wouldn't have any road issues, but in fact it's the opposite. We have heavy trucks going down old roads that constantly have potholes. We have roadworks when we're building new roads. We're coordinating with state government all of the time as part of their big build. And I know that the road infrastructure team that sits behind that do a really incredible job of navigating all of this complexity and negotiating with state government and trying to create as a cohesive travel route for our community as possible. So I just really wanted to call out those officers and the great work that we do, because it's not often visible. And as I said, it's probably not in the plan document itself, but it's definitely the work that sits behind. So yeah, thank you to the officers.
Councillor Sinclair, if no one else has anything else to say, Councillor Sullivan to close.
Nothing further, Mr. Mayor.
So we'll put that to the vote. Those in favour? So that's carried unanimously. The next item is the Planning Committee Terms of Reference update, and that's moved by Councillor Katos. Councillor Aiken second. Councillor Katos.
Mr. Mayor. So the Planning Committee, actually, which I chair, has its terms of reference reviewed annually, and the last review was done April last year. Probably the major changes that in the terms of reference are due to the different ward structure. Previously, there were multi-council awards, and from memory, it was 2 councillors had to approve a call-in, and then the mayor would approve it. Now we've got single council awards, so it's basically 2 councillors, and then the planning committee chair has to approve a call-in. Is the change. The difference also is that we previously had to, if there were 6 objections, at least 6 objections. An item could be called into the planning committee. That's now moved out to 10. Now, analysis of the last few years, there's only 2 things that went before the planning committee that wouldn't have hit that threshold of 10. So that's basically the changes. Obviously, some minor changes with changes in councillors' names and staff, etc. But probably the most interesting thing from the community perspective with this is that under the recent changes by the state government, clauses was 54 and 55. If a development is deemed to comply, council has to approve it. So if there is something in the local area that perhaps the local residents aren't too happy with, but under the state government's planning regulations, it's deemed to comply, we have to approve it. So there will be no call-ins when it comes to that. And if community members are aggrieved with that, then they can go see their state representatives. Because it won't be council's responsibility, unfortunately. We will not be able to reject a planning application if it's deemed to comply with the Planning and Environment Act. So that's probably the major change that the community won't be too happy with, as there are many instances where we've had call-ins and items have been rejected because of strong community opposition, but if they're deemed to comply, that won't be happening in future.
Thank you, Councillor Katos. Councillor Aiken.
The terms of reference have lifted the bar up a bit more, most importantly about the number of objectors, but then the report does show to us that there would have only been, I think it was 1 call-in that actually wouldn't have met the new criteria, so I think 2, was it? Yep, sorry. So I think it is a good tweak. And of course, as Councillor Katos has said as well too, we had to respond to the fact that we now have single-based individual wards as opposed to the multi-member ward system for the last 7 years that did operate in the City of Greater Geelong. So the terms of reference are responding to the governance changes that are in place in terms of the electoral model for the City of Greater Geelong, and just giving a bit more clarity in terms of number of objections that are required. What I do hope is that we do put this out onto our website in a very clean one-page format on our website so the public can actually see it, and it will help the councillors when we do get members of the community contacting us about planning processes and objection processes. Now, if we do adopt these terms tonight, I think we've got to get them out as quickly as possible so that the public has full transparency and understanding of what the process and framework we're operating under in terms of decision making. But of course, the state government's made some more announcements today, stripping local government of its planning authorities. So just hang on for more of those announcements over the next week. My understanding is, and essentially we won't possibly be involved in planning at all, Mr. Mayor, if the state government has its imprimatur that it seems to be undertaking at the present time.
So Aiken, anyone else wishing to speak? No, so Councillor Katos, to close.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just quickly, actually, I do like Councillor Aiken's suggestion there. On page 8 of the terms of reference, there is a call-in process flowchart. So that is something, if it was made available on the council website, would make it easy for community members if they want to call, if they're upset about a development in their local area and wish to call it in, it would show them the clear process and what they need to do. So I think that's a good suggestion, and I'm not sure how that can be actioned, but we'll leave that up to the council officers to perhaps work out, but it would be good.
Thank you. Councillor Katos will action.
Thank you, Councillor Katos. So put that to the vote. All those in favour? So that's carried. The next item is the Council Risk Appetite Statement. A mover, Councillor Sullivan. Second, Councillor Nelson. Councillor Sullivan.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Before us, we have the Council Risk Appetite Statement, and a risk appetite is an incredibly important document for governments, for organisations, for companies and businesses, or the like. Every decision we have is measured against benefit, risk and reward. And it affects all of our decision making across all of our areas. And as a few of the documents we've passed before, like a long-term financial, or asset plan, or road management, these are all documents which we must apply our risk strategy to. And it defines how much area we have to move when we wish to apply our mission statement of being clever and creative. For instance, we've decided in this document here that when it comes to implementing cultural activities and measures within the workplace, we can be clever and creative. We can push the boundary a little bit. But when it comes to workplace health and safety and regulations, we have zero appetite for risk. We want to see these numbers at absolute zero, no one ever hurt or exposed to risk within our workplace. So there's sort of two examples about how these juggle up. But it really does affect every single part of our workplace and the infrastructure and services we provide for the community as well. So I encourage everybody to be absolutely in depth with this document, understand it fully, because as decision makers, especially us around this table here, it affects us just as much as everybody else. So happy to move the motion.
Councillor Sullivan. Councillor Nelson.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. This risk appetite documents the boundaries for acceptable risk-taking to council by considering the most significant categories of potential risks. The document provides a structured approach for council to consider what it considers desirable risks, acceptable risks and unacceptable risks. And I wanted to thank officers for all their work, because that forms every part of council. It touches every part. So I wanted to thank officers for their work on this. Nothing further.
Councillor Nelson. Anyone else wishing to speak? If not, back to you, Councillor Sullivan, to close.
Nothing further, Mr. Mayor.
Nothing further. So we put that to the vote. All those in favour? So that's carried unanimously. Just in the interest that Councillor Contell has a conflict on the next matter, if a majority of councillors are willing to support, we can consider the next item where he can participate, and then he can basically close off, given that I'm not sure where he is, and we will find it difficult to contact him, depending. Approved. So those in favour of considering the next item, which is the Construction Works Wellington Reserve. So those in favour, I think it was unanimous.
Yes.
Right, so we'll go to that one. So if I can have a mover of that item, it's Construction Works Wellington Reserve All Abilities Pavilion. Story. Councillor Story.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Seconder, Councillor Wilkinson. Councillor Story.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This recommendation is for the awarding of a contract for construction works of the Wellington Reserve All Abilities Pavilion redevelopment project to the preferred tenderer as described in the documents. We want to appoint a suitably qualified and experienced contractor for the refurbishment and extension of the Wellington Reserve All Abilities Pavilion. This includes a full internal redevelopment and extension of the existing building, including associated site services. I think it's important to note that the community engagement was undertaken and documented in the Ocean Grove Sporting Infrastructure Plan 2025, which includes a master plan for the site. And also importantly, both cricket and baseball sporting club representatives currently sit on the project reference group and have had input into the design and development of the facility, which is an important consideration. With regard to our council plan and visions, this report aligns with the council plan strategic priority, core and critical infrastructure, but also, as my colleague Councillor Wilkinson and I, with our involvement and interest in the health portfolio, it also fits with our aspiration for an inclusive, diverse, healthy and socially connected community, and it ticks all of those boxes. So I would commend the recommendation to the Chamber. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Story. Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you. And this is one step closer to a really fantastic project for, clubs that are, pardon the pun, hitting it well out of the park in terms of access and inclusion. It's really, really fantastic. So I commend this, this motion in terms of identifying a suitable contractor, and very happy to leave it there.
So Wilkinson. Anyone else wishing? Councillor Aiken.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. Look, I think it's actually important to also acknowledge the state government. For those that weren't around with the start of this particular project, we did seek state government planning funding specifically under the All Abilities channel, and we were successful with that planning money. And then the next stage, after we did the planning process, we actually did specifically target state government All Abilities funding opportunity, and we were successful. And it really is a unique targeted project, which is about creating accessible and inclusive sporting facilities in the Bellarine, and it really should be commended that we have worked very strongly in partnership with the state government and the local state member Alison Marchant to deliver this particular project. And I think the community should be really proud that this is really the last step now in terms of issuing of the contract and the tender to deliver and implement what has been a really good project for the Bellarine up until now. And I personally will be looking forward to the opening and hopefully able to attend as the chair of our Disability Access and Inclusion Committee. Mr. Mayor, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Aiken. Anyone else wishing to speak? If not, then Councillor Story to close.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and as always, thank you to Councillor Aiken for his thorough historical review, and I appreciate those comments. And Mr. Mayor, just in case anybody's in any doubt, Wellington is in the Bellarine. Thank you.
So with that, we put that to the vote. Those in favour? So that's carried. So now, Councillor Contell, I think you can...
Hi, Eddie.
Thanks, everyone. See ya.
Right, so we'll move then now back to item supply of asphalt works products and services. Councillor Sullivan moving, Councillor Burson seconding. Councillor Sullivan.
Yep, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Short and sweet, this is is for a contract tender for the supply of asphalt works products and services. A large one for the City of Geelong here, a very vital resource for us, so we can do a lot of maintenance and construction without. So a very important tender that has been done thoroughly well and that we'll be approving the assignment of. Thank you.
Councillor Sullivan, Councillor Burson. Further, anyone else wishing to speak? If not, Councillor Sullivan to close. Nothing further. Okay. It's, all those in favour? So that's carried. And then the record of informal meetings of councillors. Can I have a mover? Councillor Nelson moves. Councillor Katos. Anything to say, Councillor?
No, just for noting, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Katos, likewise.
Mr. Mayor, just for noting.
Anyone else wishing to speak? If not, Councillor Nelson.
Nothing further, Mr. Mayor.
Right, so put that to the vote. So all those in favour? So that's carried. And I think that concludes the meeting at 8:45 p.m. Thank you.
Finally 3 million, right?